and we went into it, and they said, well, we're not sure whether you guys can do it, but we will give you one test run just to see how you cope and see if you think it's actually workable. Hollywood is often portrayed as a world of glitter, glamour, and red carpet moments. But behind the bright lights and applause, some stars had secrets that would shock even their closest friends. The people we cheered for on screen weren't always the heroes we imagined. They had sides that were dark, twisted, and sometimes cruel. Now, decades later, one of Hollywood's most trusted insiders has finally spoken up. Ron Howard. What he revealed about the golden age of Hollywood is so shocking that it will make you question everything you thought you knew about these legendary icons and the world they lived in. All about Ron Howard. Ron Howard was born on March 1st, 1954 in Duncan, Oklahoma, the older of two sons off Rance Howard, a director, writer, and actor, and Jean Spiegel, an actress. He has German, English, Scottish, Irish, and Dutch ancestry. His father's original surname was Beckenald, but it changed it to Howard in 1948 for his acting career. At the time of Ron's birth, Rance was serving in the United States Air Force. From a very young age, Howard grew up surrounded by the entertainment industry. He was tutor reading the sets at DeSolo Studios while he worked in television. When not working in the show, he attended Robert Louis Stevenson Elementary and David Starr Jordan Junior High in Burbank, California. Later, he graduated from John Burroughs High School in Burbank and briefly attended the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts, though he didn't graduate. Being a child actor, Howard soon realized that he might want to direct one day. Inspired by his first experiences in front of the camera, Howard began his acting career early. His first credited role came in the 1959 film The Journey, but he really showed up in numerous TV series, such as The DuPont Show with June Allison, The Twilight Zone, Dennis the Menace, and The Many Loves of Dobby Gillis, IN 1960. He landed the role that brought him to the attention of audiences everywhere. Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show, starring as the son of Andy Griffith for all 8 seasons of the show. Howard remembered the experience fondly, even recounting a scene wherein he had to cry because his Stowy Turtle was pretend dead. The show gained popularity with its wholesome and old-fashioned air, earning multiple Emmy nominations throughout its run. Howard continued acting into the 1970s in films such as The Music Man, 1962, The Courtship of Eddie's Father, 1963, and American Graffiti, 1973, which served as a forerunner to the television series Happy Days. The actor played the endearing, wholesome Richie Cunningham in the latter show from 1974 until Head decided to leave in 1980 to concentration directing. He returned to guest star at times during his later years. Among other work, he also appeared in the series Spy, Land of the Giants, Daniel Boone, and MASH. Howard made his directorial debut in 1977 with the film Grand Theft Auto, which he co-wrote with his father. He then gained momentum with films such as Night Shift, released in 1982, Splash in 1984, and Cocoon in 1985. Throughout his career, Howard has directed numerous well-received film projects such as Apollo 13, released in 1995, A Beautiful Mind in 2001, Frost Nixon in 2008, and Rush in 2013. He also prepared family and box office movies like How the Grinch Stole Christmas in 2000, Willow in 1988, and Solo, a Star Wars story in 2018. Known for perfection and telling the story in the most emotive manner possible, Howard has received numerous accolades, including 2 Academy Award nominations for Best Director. Having worked with Hollywood giants such as Tom Hanks, Russell Crowe, and Nicole Kidman, he has delivered films that have received unprecedented success at the box office and fantastic reviews. Even now, Howard keeps exploring other genres from historical dramas to survival thrillers, maintaining his status as one of Hollywood's most respected directors and storytellers. His personal life. Besides a brilliant career, Ron Howard has had a remarkable personal life, and one of its cornerstones is his long-lasting marriage. He married Cheryl Alley on June 7, 1975, and since then, they have been together, building a strong family foundation while Howard's career soared. They have 4 children together, 2 of whom have also followed in their father's footsteps into the entertainment industry. Probably the most famous of the children, Bryce Dallas Howard, is an actress and director who has starred in such films as Jurassic World and The Village. Another of Ron's daughters, Paige Howard, has also pursued acting, adding to her family's deep connection to Hollywood. The other two children of the couple have kept themselves quite away from the media and public eyes, preferring to live private lives. Through the years, Howard has spoken frequently about family and how such a bond keeps him and his personal life anchored amidst a maelstrom that is Hollywood fame. His marriage to Cheryl Alley, which has survived for over 4 decades, has been an anchor to this effect. In a Hollywood culture notorious for fleeting relationships and very public splits, the marriage of Howard and Alley is unusually one of commitment and mutual support. The highs and pitfalls of their Hollywood lives, from child stardom pressures to the demands of directing big blockbuster films, have been survived by their partnership. All spring of testament that family bonds can see one through even in the glittery, crazy world of showbiz. Interestingly, in February 2025, Howard shared one of those fascinating and unexpected revelations about his connection to one of his 4 Mirko stars. He found out that he and Don Knotts of Barney Faye fame on the Andy Griffith Show were cousins. What arguably makes the revelation more remarkable is that neither was aware of the family connection during Knott's lifetime. The two men had enjoyed an iconic on-screen father-son-like relationship as Andy Griffith and Barney Faye, bringing laughter and charm into the lives of millions without the realization that there was in fact a hidden familial bond linking them. Adding an extra layer of intrigue to Howard's personal story was this surprising connection, mixing family and Hollywood history with serendipity in every real way. Ron Howard's life off camera, from his enduring marriage to unexpected family discoveries, reveals a man who holds relationships dear to him, cherishes family, and still finds wonder and connection in ways that perhaps not even the most seasoned Hollywood insider would anticipate accusations of blandness. Many critics say Ron Howard has a very safe middle-of-the-road style. In an essay in Grantland, even as he's directed dozens of movies and had hits like Apollo 13 and Splash, there's still a sense among some reviewers that his work is polished but predictable. Because he works across so many genres, comedies, dramas, historical pictures, and blockbusters, it's hard to spot a distinct Ron Howard style. A 2025 article from Far Out magazine makes that case precisely. His versatility makes him too adaptable. He changes his approach depending on the story, which means you rarely watch a film and think, yes, this is classic Howard. In other words, instead of having an artistic voice all his own, he is considered a safe pair of hands, someone who can offer guarantee of good films that please both the masses and studios, but rarely pushes the boundaries or strains cinematic limits. Some critics feel that under his direction, movies often stay in comfortable ground, both emotionally and thematically, rather than taking bold, risky leaps in creative angles. This is an insult to skills. A lot of Howard's films are well constructed and quite fun and popular. However, for viewers and critics who want films that shake things up, films that reach out and make you uncomfortable, question reality, leave you unsettled in a good way, his style sometimes feels too Sofito by the book. And yet, that's safety as his audience. Hollywood often rewards reliability, particularly in big-budget films. And for some viewers, a well-made, emotionally satisfying movie beats an audacious experiment that might fail. Still, detractors of Howard will likely continue to argue being dependable doesn't always mean being memorable. Moving on to the most interesting part of this video. Now, we're going to discuss the 6 most evil actors of Hollywood exposed by Ron Howard. Henry Winkler. Once the show Happy Days was rolling, things behind the scenes got a little sticky. You see, Winkler's character Fonzie became an unexpectedly huge hit. Producers and the network started giving him much more attention, more screen time, more promos, more fan love. That shift didn't sit well with Ron Howard, even though he'd signed on as the show's original lead. With Fonzie the center of attention, Howard said the studio and network treated him, in his words, with a lot of disrespect. The change hurt, he said suddenly. The show didn't feel like it was built around Richie Cunningham anymore. The pressure culminated for a time when there was even a suggestion of renaming the series from Happy Days to Fonzie's Happy Days. Yes, the show that originally centered on Ron's character might have been rebranded around Fonzie. When Howard heard that proposal, he didn't hold back. He told producers he would quit if they went ahead. He said he'd rather return to film school than stay in a show that, in his view, had lost its heart. For him, it wasn't merely a business decision, but a personal one in the first place. He believed in the original ensemble, and secondly, in fairness. He understood that from a business point of view, Fawn's popularity made sense, but he just couldn't take in that a show he committed himself to was being reshaped for somebody else. Interestingly, this tension wasn't born out of hate between him and Winkler. Quite the contrary. According to Winkler, he was always careful not to flaunt his rising fame at Howard's expense. When he actually got the raise in fan frenzy, he reportedly asked himself not to let it damage their friendship. Finally, the show's creator, Gary Marshall, intervened. He informed the producers that if Howard was against changing the title, they would not do it, and they did not. Thus, Happy Days remained Happy Days. Howard stayed on for another couple of seasons before leaving, not out of spite, but because he wanted to pursue his own dream as a director. So yes, there was real tension at one point, not a tabloid-style feud, but a clash of ambition, fame, and fairness. It wasn't a matter of personal animosity toward Winkler, but rather a case of Howard standing up for what he felt was right for the show and for himself, John Wayne. When Howard arrived on the set of The Shootist, a 1976 Western that would prove to be John Wayne's final film, he already knew that Wayne had a reputation. Wayne, the legendary The Duke, was known for being tough on younger actors. Howard later admitted he went into the project bracing himself for trouble. The first meeting didn't quite get off on the right foot. As Howard walked into Wayne's hotel room with the film's director, someone handed Wayne a copy of TV Guide featuring Howard and his co-star. Wayne glanced at it, then back at Howard and deadpanned. Ah, here's the big shot. Howard remembered how his heart sank. He thought, oh man, I'm screwed here on day one. That reaction says a lot. For a young actor stepping into a film opposite a screen legend known for exacting standards, that glance and that tone were enough to fill him with dread. But despite that chilly opening, the dynamic between them shifted, and not in the way Howard feared. As filming went along, it turned out Howard's background in television naturally resonated with Wayne. The older actor reportedly respected Howard for coming from TV, a medium Wayne likened to early cinematic short films. That background, Wayne felt meant Howard knew how to get it done. What cemented their rapport was Howard's initiative. At one point, he asked Wayne if they'd run through their scene lines together, a move that surprised Wayne because apparently few actors dared to rehearse lines with him. That willingness to prepare and to show respect reportedly earned Howard Wayne's approval. All things considered, despite that awkward start and what could easily have turned into real hostility, Howard said Wayne Callan had been nicer. They developed a working relationship grounded in mutual respect. Wayne sharing old-school wisdom about work ethic. Howard listening and responding with dedication. So yeah, there was tension, discomfort, and maybe even a bit of intimidation when a young actor came face-to-face with a legend. But rather than a feud gone sour, theirs turned into one of respect, unexpected understanding, and shared commitment to craft. It's a reminder that sometimes what begins as a cold reception might just warm into something real, provided you meet it with humility, professionalism, and a willingness to learn. Tom Hanks. When Winkler was tapped to helm the 1989 film Turner and Hooch, starring Tom Hanks, things started with big hopes. Winkler reportedly spent about 11 weeks preparing for the movie and got to know his dog co-star. He thought they had a good shooting plan. Barely 13 days into production, Winkler was fired. The fold-up happened so suddenly that Winkler later said he got along better with the dog than with the star. According to Winkler, in a 2024 interview, the tension might have started during a location scouting trip in Carmel, California. He recalled a fan bursting out of a shop shouting Henry Fonz, a reference to his iconic sitcom character, while casually mentioning Hanks, too. Winkler intimated that this reaction might have made Hanks uneasy, possibly contributing to what went wrong. Over the years, rumors built up about a bitter feud between Winkler and Hanks, though nothing was ever totally confirmed. Neither man publicly blamed the other. Winkler himself has denied that there's ongoing animosity, calling much of the feud talk exaggeration or misunderstanding. Where Howard comes in is important, having worked closely with both men. Hester with Winkler on the classic TV show Happy Days, and directed Hanks in multiple films over the years. Howard said the situation disappointed him. Had described the problem not as personal hatred, but as a clash of working styles between Winkler and Hanks. Both reportedly reached out to Howard separately after things unraveled. Howard also said that while the two didn't get along at the time, there's been a lot of water under the bridge since. He's invited both to his birthday parties, for instance, suggesting some form of reconciliation or at least a willingness to move on. There was a documented period of tension between Hanks and Winkler centered on the fallout from Turner and Hooch, but characterizing it as a full-blown feud is tricky. Winkler denies ongoing bitterness, and Howard, who was close to both, describes it more as approfessional mismatch than deep personal animosity. Wilford Brimley is Cocoon's mid-1980s director. Howard was still a young man while Brimley was a veteran character actor. And according to Howard, their working relationship wasn't always smooth. Howard mentioned in a 2023 interview summarized by a retrospectivian the production of the film. I had to deal with him very differently than I dealt with anybody else, and it was sometimes unpleasant. What made things tricky, as Howard recalled, was that Brimley had a distinct acting style. Instead of closely adhering to the script, Brimley liked to improvise, tobe in the moment. That instinct for improvisation reportedly created friction, particularly with a young director attempting to manage a cast with mixed ages and approaches. But Howard was candid about the trade-off. Although it made for a more challenging set, Brimley's improvisations brought something special to film. Tone, naturalism, even honesty. He said Brimley elevated the tone of Cocoon, giving scenes a depth the script alone might not have achieved. There is one recent article claiming Brimley gave Ion director like Howard a hard time and going so far as to call Brimley the actor who absolutely hated working for Ron Howard. That piece says Howard described the experience as sometimes unpleasant. But contemporary mainstream sources, trade interviews, retrospectives, and obituaries do not support a narrative of personal hatred or long-standing bitterness. Indeed, even after admitting tensions, Howard publicly acknowledged Brimley's acting strengths and credited him for key scenes. For example, in one memorable fishing scene from Cocoon, Brimley asked Howard to throw out the script and allow him to improvise, and Howard agreed. The result, by most accounts, became one of the most emotionally resonant scenes in the film. Howard acknowledged that sometimes Brimley was unpleasant to work with, and he found himself having to work at the relationship differently than with other members of the cast. But beyond that, there's no solid mainstream evidence that this turned into a lasting feud or that Brimley hated Howard in any public confirmed way. Cillian Murphy. When Murphy signed up for In the Heart of the Sea, he knew he was in for one of the toughest shoots of his career. But even then, it seemed to go beyond what he imagined. He and the rest of the cast were required to undergo harsh physical conditions in order to portray desperate sailors on a doomed whaling ship. By Murphy's own account, they were drastically cut down to starvation-level diets and were put under freezing cold and constant dampness with brutal emotional strain. He said the weight loss regime was really hard and that I actually think I went mad during it, referring to the toll it took on his mental health. Murphy characterized experience as a sort of emotional and physical grind, hysterical, lucid, and then weeping all the time. He said, confessing that the shoot left him feeling unbalanced. The memory stuck with him. A reminder the film was not a typical comfortable production, but a whole body, whole mind immersion into suffering meant to reflect the real horrors faced by the sailors whose story they were retelling. On top of that, one recent article features a claim that Murphy was the actor who absolutely hated working for Ron Howard, stating that the extreme conditions made the shoot intolerable to him. That suggests there was at least a degree of friction, not necessarily personal animosity between actor and director, born out of the demand and discomfort of the circumstances. But the record isn't black and white. In interviews, Murphy has also acknowledged that he understood the demands and willingly accepted them because he respected Howard and believed in what the movie was trying to do. During a press round with a co-actor, he reportedly said, "When you're doing it for Ron Howard for you, Ron, we'll do it." That hesitancy turned loyalty suggests it was less a feud than a raw negotiation between ambition, art, and human limits. Meanwhile, Howard himself later admitted the conditions were harsh. He said at the end of many Dason's set, he would apologize, knowing how heavy the toll was on his actors. And yet, despite the suffering, The cast often contended that, if anything, this was just a fraction of what the real sailors endured. So, while there was documented hardship and serious discomfort on the set of In Hard Off the Sea, what clearly emerges from the available evidence is not some sort off-the-book long-term feud or hatred between Murphy and Howard. Rather, a story of sacrifice, trust, and resilience emerges. Murphy accepted extreme conditions to honor the story. Howard pushed for realism and acknowledged the burden. The tension seems to be rootless in interpersonal conflict, and Moraine, the brutal demands of making such a difficult, uncompromising film. Russell Crowe. When Ron Howard worked with Russell Crowe on films like A Beautiful Mind and Cinderella Man, he knew he was working with a powerful, intense actor. A.S. Howard once said of Crowe's temperament, "Working with Russell is a little bit like filming on a tropical island.